So some exciting personal news to kick us off. Thanks to Castor, I got invited to Red Bull's factory the other week. Shall we take a look at the comments on that one? They brought you to test the suspension of the RB22. He's excited to announce he finally found a room big enough to fit him in. Thank goodness they didn't let you sit in one of the cars. And people say bullying doesn't work. Will probably wet himself standing next to that Red Bull with a number 3 Lamau. Yeah, no, that wasn't piss. Okay, on a serious note, big thanks to Castor for the invite, and if you want 15% off on top of their usual Black Friday deals, use the code on screen and the link in the description below. Why is Zach Brown at Red Bull HQ? I'll go and die already.
That's rude.
Hey there guys, I'm Will and welcome to the Comedy Review, the show where its host only wears sportswear if he's getting sponsored. Alright, listen here, you little shit. It's also the show where we talk about things that happen in motorsport. Things like this. Esteban Ocon finds a 67th chromosome. Charles Leclerc sums up life at Ferrari. And I actually can't think of anything else. I know, let's just check out Mercedes socials. Oh, look, here's Bottas in the fridge. This is usually, say, where I have a lot to talk about. But this time, we actually kind of don't. You see, F1 heads to Qatar this week, where usually the best part of the weekend is when everyone gets to go home. It's too hot, the gravel kills you, all in a country where you're more likely to find a woman with a successful career than you are an overtaker around this shit drome. Don't worry though, we've got a sprint this year, making this the one instance where I might actually deem a second practice session more entertaining than a quote-unquote race. Anyway, let's park that terrible news and talk about special. That ought to lighten the mood. Rumours surfaced following the Las Vegas Grand Prix that Aston Martin CEO Andy Cowell was set to be shot in the head. You may well have missed that, of course. It was rather drowned out by all those McLaren fans crying their wank sock was only 24 points ahead with 2 races to go. Aston Martin's PR team have now caught wind of the rumours, and apparently there was a greater need for Andy in the team's engine department. So the question now remains, who takes over his role as team principal? Several big names are in the mix. Horny Horner, Andreas Sai, why did I ever leave McLaren? Even the man Cowell replaced 14 months ago, Martin Whitmarsh, just in case you needed more evidence to prove this was not a fest in any way possible. In the end, the paddock was taken by surprise when Aero Jesus Adrian Newey pulled a Thanos and said, fine, I'll do it myself, taking on the role of team leader and designer and consultant and dinner lady and janitor and that guy that has to mop up daddy specials dribble every now and again. With 7 other high-ranking officials assassinated just 3 weeks ago, at what point does this organisation start to look like the new Alpine? Or perhaps they were the original Alpine. They hired their Make-A-Wish driver years ago. Just a single practice session then. Terrible news for McLaren, who blamed that fact in Las Vegas for their double disqualification due to plank wear, and George Russell was very quick to start writing my comedy review for me. There'd be an extra element of strategy in this one, as Pirelli announced that this race would be a mandatory 2-stop in order to prevent the Losail circuit from stoning its tyres that they were a woman who contemplated free will. Anyway, that's an awfully clever way to announce your compounds are shit, isn't it? If it sounds like we're doing a lot of the new stuff in this section dedicated to practice, that probably sums up just how exciting it was out there in FP1, in which Oscar Piastri shocked the world by going fastest for once. Fellow bottle ranger Lando Norris was instead preoccupied with testing his racing lines for qualifying, and Max Verstappen wasn't safe out there either, blaming this off on his steering wheel, seemingly forgetting the fact that he was the one holding it. Further back, the Alpines were doing the rest of the paddock a service by holding them up and allowing for the only overtakes of the weekend. Their playmate, Yuki Tsunoda, was encountering issues of his own though, the engineer over the radio to claim Bottas was approaching from behind. A scary prospect, though don't worry, I think he's still in the fridge. Also, Yuki, I get the feeling that won't be an issue for you next year. We'd end the hour with some qualifying simulation runs and some more riveting off-track moments, this including the 2 Ferraris, who actually weren't on fast laps, though as you're about to see, it's kind of hard to work out the difference. Ferrari looked to have their mojo back in SQ1, Leclerc P6 on his final effort in the 16 car. Now we just wait for #Bless to join him. Oh, actually, maybe not. Lawson would be the other surprise elimination for the first part of sprint qualifying, the pair joined by Special and Team Special as the remaining 15 moved on to SQ2. That session would see a rather unique strategy put in place by Nico Hülkenberg to remain in the top 10, the Sauber driver scattering gravel all over the road at the final corner, setting up what was effectively a spike strip for the remainder of the field. It wouldn't work, however, the 27 car 14th, just behind his teammate, and the Haas machines failing to progress as well, which quite frankly they deserve after this shit earlier in the week. The last spot in the drop zone was set to be between Isaac Hadjar and Kimi Antonelli, though with the Frenchman set to move up to Red Bull in 2026, Kimi was kind enough to let him experience one last SQ3 before ending his career alongside Max Verstappen. Oh, never mind, Isaac's lap's been deleted. I've forgotten about that, but I've written the joke now, so deal with it. Up at the top of the table, Norris had pipped Piastri to P1, but now this was where it really mattered. As we sat ready for the inevitable bottle that was to come, it spawned from a rather peculiar place. Max Verstappen quite enjoyed bouncing when he was making his kid last year, though now it appears he's not so much a fan. His RB22 looking for sloppy seconds as it spat the Dutchman into the runoff and ripped his own floor off. That meant Verstappen's pace was so bad, it made Yuki Tsunoda look good, the Japanese driver beating his Red Bull teammate for the first time in a qualifying session all year. Checking in on the nursery then Piastri done the time good enough to take pole and snag the track record for that matter. Lando Norris was hot on his heels though, until he tried out the Hulkenberg line through the final corner and discovered that rather f***s up your lap. George Russell was thus able to sneak into P2 ahead of the sprint, lining up alongside Oscar Piastri, which you'd think McLaren would look happy about if I'm honest. Four drivers would opt to gut their cars and start from the pit lane for the sprint, so 16 machines would line up on the starting grid, Oscar Piastri would lead from pole, and Oscar Piastri would take his first sprint win of the season. Oh wait, you want more than that? Alright then, brace yourselves. This try not to sleep challenge would see the Australian get away from pole, and after Russell nearly incurred the hatred of the UK's 6-year-old population, the top three would come out of turn 1 exactly as they'd entered it. Max Verstappen was on the move however, barging past the hard-fighting Lando Fernando. Yeah, nice. Max Verstappen was on the move however, barging past a hard-fighting Fernando Alonso before moving into 4th ahead of his teammate, who I imagine was reminded of his well-being ahead of turn 4. Max thus went on the charge after Lando in 3rd, and as we waited for that to not happen, we could watch as Charles Leclerc went on the mission to baptise every piece of runoff with his Ferrari floor. Anyway, here's Verstappen having a look down the inside of Lando Norris. Hope you enjoyed that, as you're never going to see it again. And at this point, the McLaren broke the DRS, and we got a lovely title contender parade for the remaining 16 tours of this one. Further down the field, Carlos Sainz was putting on a Magic Mike performance to keep fans engaged. Leclerc had got some experience with the runoff, he was now giving guided tours to Liam Lawson. This defence completely legal to the point where the Kiwi had to hand P13 back, because these race guidelines really work, don't they? Fernando Alonso had also been doing a great job in 6th, though this off was enough for Kimi Antonelli to complete the only non-lap 1 legal overtake of the afternoon, heading into lap 13. If you wanted to see more of that, tough, you had to put up with the track limits penalties instead. Yuki Tsunoda having the best race of his Red Bull career in P5, though about to throw all that away when he abused the white lines one time too many. He'd momentarily lose that 5th spot, though gain it back when Antonelli was handed the penalty as well, before it was then rescinded and then given back again. Because FIA reasons, I guess. Meanwhile, Piastri came across the line to take victory. In a sprint, even F1 couldn't push to 8 minutes for their highlights package. Russell and Norris would complete the top 3, Verstappen 4th, and meaning he had to finish ahead of Lando on Sunday if he wants to keep his championship hopes alive, as Nossa bottled the removal of his own balaclava. I, meanwhile, am just trying to stay alive myself, which gets increasingly more difficult when you see what our ex-Bell End of the Week has been up to. We're going international this week. Most of you can't read this yet, but I think that username kind of speaks for itself. This while watching the Qatar GP as Lando Norris's car catches fire from a fatal crash, the firefighters can't get him out and there's a heart-wrenching silence while the commentator says the driver isn't moving. Would it surprise you if I said this guy was from Argentina? I hope this backfired to you. It will be a joyous day when no one shows up to your funeral. Your mum on the GIF. Yeah, I think this one speaks for itself. Big thank you to everyone who submitted it, and if you'd like to nominate the next ex-Bell End of the Week, use the hashtag on screen, tag me on the platform, or join our Discord server. Now, time to put ourselves all through that again for the Grand Prix. Oh look.
Gabriella. Why you have a picture of me in your room? Do you love me that much?
I can't wait for these guys to f*** off after next week. Another qualifying session and another Q1 elimination for Lewis Hamilton. Ferrari had spent all night changing the car, but according to hashtag Blessed, had somehow made it worse. I think he's just got back to the UK. Franco Colapinto was also out in Q1 as he was ribbed by his own social media admin. He'd find himself sharing the honour with Ocon, Special and Tsunoda. Looks like we really are back to normal. Q2 would be, well, quite frankly, f***ing boring. The Kick Saubers were out as they fondled each other on their live streams. Behrman, Lawson and Albon would complete the final drop zone of the weekend. Up at the front though, both McLarens are on top form so far, and that will continue heading into the top 10 shootout. Lando edging his teammate by 35 milliseconds on the initial runs and leaving Oscar with it all to do if he He wanted to keep his streak running at the end of the session. There are a few more twists and turns to come before that though. Charles Leclerc getting a 360-degree view of the Losail International Circuit, and Carlos Sainz bringing half of his garage floor with him as he headed out onto the track, which of course means we need a red flag, and yeah, here we go again. We get going in time for one final set of runs from the championship trio. Piastri clapping back to go a 10th faster than his teammate, both McLarens clearly back to their early season form, as Norris has just bottled it yet again. So as the team remembered to celebrate this time round, Verstappen would slot into third and complete the top three. Piastri would pose next to this man, showing far too much skin for the Qatari government. As he was taken away to be executed, it was time for the Grand Prix. Race day would start with Colapinto being consigned to the pit lane again. You know what, when you have to change your car so much during a weekend, might it just be the slab of meat in the middle that's the problem instead? What's that? Package from Argentina? Lando Norris would get the best start off the line, according to David Croft, a stat that was immediately proven to be a massive lie. Verstappen taking advantage of the clean side of the grid, and I don't care if I get some flack for this. At this point in the season, that's being added to the count. There was nothing else to report on lap 1, so we look further down the field. Nico Hülkenberg scrapping with Pierre Gasly in the battle for P9. In Qatar though, overtaking is the same as hugging in public, which means it's illegal, and this move saw Hulk literally stoned on the exit of turn 1. That brought out the safety car at the perfect time. 50 laps remaining, thus 2 stints of 25 laps that obey Pirelli's shit tyre rule. Everyone should be coming into the pit lane, right? Right?
You idiot! You're honestly an idiot. I don't know what's wrong with you. But your ego is pissing me off. You think you're the shit. You think you're so high and mighty.
As everyone peeled in, McLaren opted to stay out, abiding by papaya rules once again. If one driver is to be f***ed, the other one should be too. Time to dig out this graphic again. Notter and Piastri thus found themselves a pit stop down, in a move seemingly taken from Ferrari's advent calendar of shit strategies. On the bright side, this race might now be somewhat interesting. Lando will be reminded to get close on the restart, which you'd think is advice he didn't need, though still threw it away and put himself at risk to Verstappen as we got going again on lap 10. And now the extended highlights jump to lap 25, which says a lot, doesn't it? Piastri and Norris were in for their pit stops at this stage, Lando at risk to Fernando Alonso in 6th, who was stockpiling a train of cars to pounce if McLaren decided to make it 2 bottles for the price of 1. The Briton would hang on, however, and go after Verstappen in the lead, Sainz and Antonelli making up the provisional podium, having gained into the safety car. Piastri would make short work of the Italian on lap 30. Norris, meanwhile, decided studying the intricacies of the Mercedes diffuser was far more important than its crumbling title challenge. Luckily for him, the rest of the field now had to come in. Ollie Behrman facing the music for whatever exactly was going on here, the Briton whacking his steering wheel in frustration and making a noise I've never heard a human make before. McLaren, meanwhile, still believing they were the ones on the right strategy and the remaining 18 cars were just stupid, were busy telling their drivers they now needed to be faster than Max. Problem was, that wasn't happening. Lando whinging on the radio and sending his rear end into Narnia.
Hang on a minute, Oscar. Papaya rules. Make sure you do that too.
Ollie Behrman's day was getting worse. His botched pit stop had now brought on an additional penalty, the Haas driver serving it before promptly rage quitting and going home. Piastri had also had enough, deciding f*** his strategy team, and was making the calls himself, pitting early to try and have time to fight back towards race leader Verstappen in the closing stages of the race. As the Australian came into box, Norris's attempts to go faster than Verstappen were going so well the Dutchman was now right on his tail, the McLaren holding up his championship rival, to the point where when he did eventually pit, he found himself not just behind the Red Bull, but also with Sainz and Antonelli in the way. The Spaniard could now smell a second podium on the year. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso went for a dramatic spin. I'll be honest, I just thought I'd fallen asleep and dreamed that one up. As Russell was the next to discover overtaking around the Losail isn't allowed, this one was quickly and thankfully coming to a close. A few laps too early for Isaac Hadjar, whose front tyre did the cool thing in Qatar, killing itself and seeing him trundle to the end on 3 wheels. Antonelli another to bottle it at the flag, giving up P4 for Norris as Verstappen started his final tour. Piastri's efforts to catch up to the Dutchman had gone about as well as my attempts to get a girlfriend this year, Max crossing the line to snatch P2 in the drivers and just be 12 points off Norris heading into the finale next week. Oscar now sits 16 points behind, though is still in it, and Sainz held on to complete this weekend's podium, so that's nice I guess. Things I would rather do than come back here include ripping my own cock off and skull f***ing myself to death with it. Thankfully, the McLaren Omega bottle gave us something to look forward to throughout this one, even if in the end we got very little out of it. Let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the comedy review, well, I'll be back next week to find out how McLaren throw it all away. So hit that like button like it's Ollie Behrman's steering wheel and get subscribed as we aim for 200k by the end of the season. Actually, I don't think that's happening, is it, lads? Big thank you to Castor once again. If you're watching this video when it comes out, their Black Friday deals are still on, so you can use the link in the description and the code FP1WIL15 to get an additional 15% off on top of that. I won't lie, that also helps support me and the channel as well. But with my corporate pandering out the way, for the penultimate time this year, f*** off.